Dear friends, welcome to a new episode of the show of the Psyche and Human Body podcast. I'm your host, Reda, and we are in episode number 17. Today's guest is called Lindsay. Lindsay is a yoga instructor. So today she will take us into a journey of the world of yoga. She will be discussing the several types of yoga and how did yoga help her in, let's say, overcoming some of the life struggles, and how does she use yoga as a tool on a daily life for her to connect with people, to connect with life in general. So please leave all your comments in the section below, wherever you are watching this on Spotify or YouTube. Follow us, subscribe for more future videos, and I will see you in the future. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Bye-bye. Lindsay, let me start the conversation by just introducing yourself and telling me and the audience who Lindsay is.
Okay, good question to start. I'm originally from the US, and I've lived here in Abu Dhabi now for 6 years. This is my 6th year here. And kind of a little bit about my professional background is that I'm originally a teacher. I went to school to be an educator, and I came here to be a kindergarten teacher, and it kind of like propelled me into more of like a health career as well. So that's kind of where it's taken me with teaching. Currently now I teach yoga, but I'm also still a teacher. So I do that in addition.
Lindsay, why teaching? What have got you to, let's say, get into teaching in the first place? Why did you choose that path?
I think I come from a really big family, so just having like children around was always kind of a thing, you know, in my house. So teaching in general was just like a natural thing for me. It was very easy, and then I really enjoyed it. I worked with children like throughout university and stuff. I was like teaching kids after school programs and stuff like that. So it felt very natural for me to stick with that basically, and then I kind of made the realization in my last year of university that I was not wanting to be a teacher in the US. And I felt maybe an international career is going to be better for me. And I really loved traveling. I was very interested in traveling. I had traveled a little bit outside of the States. And I felt, okay, if I'm a teacher and I'm, you know, a native English speaker, I can go to another country and teach them there. And then I still get that experience of learning about myself while traveling too. So it was a really nice way to just kind of start that type of lifestyle. And I really enjoyed it for a long time, you know, like
the traveling and the teaching around the world.
I moved to Thailand as like my first move away from the US.
Yeah,
teach
I don't
English.
know why the Thailand and Bali are the first two countries to get away for everyone. They're planning to go somewhere.
Because it's so far away from the US. I'm like, let me go the furthest possible away. And my family was like,
on earth, where's the furthest?
Yeah.
I'll go there.
My family was like, why are you moving to Thailand? That's so far away. I'm like, that's exactly why. You know, I really wanted that experience of just like something completely different from my culture and just kind of, something new.
How did that go? How did Thailand culture, the culture over there felt different for you, from the US? What's different between the culture in Asia and in the US from Lindsay's point of view?
I mean, Thailand is a very different type of culture. It's just all-encompassing food, language, the lifestyle in general is a little bit less, you know, America is very kind of work, go.
Virtual.
Not a lot of like joy in life, you know. Thai people are very like slow, like let's enjoy kind of thing. And the food is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I love Thai food.
So, okay, now I know the reason why. So it's not because it's far away, it's because
it was very easy to travel there as well. You know, like the lifestyle there was just, it was about enjoying life, you know, and I really liked that about it. So I loved it. I loved every second of it. Teaching there was amazing. The kids were amazing. Families were great. The language is cool. I liked it. So it was nice.
It's like a different culture from the US. It's going to feel like something new for you, as Lindsay, for you to start exploring the world. So it's like a good point for you to start over there.
It was also like about getting out of that comfort zone too. Because when I first moved there, I went with a an international teaching program. So they placed me in a school. It wasn't that I got to choose, a certain area to go to, or like which area of Thailand I wanted to live, which of course everybody would probably choose. Let me go to the beaches, the islands. No, I was placed in a tiny village in the way northeast.
So maybe like not the way Instagram put it for you, but like it's somewhere away from the beaches.
Exactly.
For the first time.
So it was very out of my comfort zone. And I knew that if I did that it would be it would be growth, it would be interesting for me to like learn some new things. And I did, definitely. It was also very lonely. There were a lot of times where I'm like one of the only English speaking people in that little village. So it was very, okay, how am I going to get around here? I need to learn some words, I guess.
Lindsay, so you moved from the US and you went to Thailand to start, let's say, exploring the world. So at which point in your life you decided that, all right, now it's the time for me to start taking yoga as a path for me in life? Like, why yoga as well?
Yoga has been kind of a constant in my life for a long time. I started practicing with my mom when I was a kid. It was just something that I always saw my mom doing, and I thought, okay, this is nice. I like this, and I did it in college just for fun. And for a while, it was really just like a physical practice for me. It was more of like, that was my gym. I'm going to the gym, I'm going to yoga. And I really liked it. I had fun with it. It was great. But I did it over maybe 10 years of just on and off kind of, using it as just a gym thing. And then it wasn't until 2023, just this past year, that I was thinking, I had been going through some hard times, which we can deep dive into.
Sure, we can go there.
But yoga, I ended up wanting to go for the training to be a teacher because I saw what a transformational experience it was for me. So I thought, okay, maybe this is going to be my purpose to help, teach other people how yoga can be used as a tool for not just that physical health, but for the mental health as well.
So before we get into a bit more deep into the, let's say, how did it change your life? For me, let's say, as someone who doesn't have a background in yoga, like what can you tell me about? How can you introduce, let's say, yoga practice for someone who doesn't know about it?
I think so often whenever I'm introducing people or I'm meeting new people and I'm telling them that I teach yoga and they're like, oh, I'm not flexible at all. Yeah, exactly. That's like the first thing I hear,
like, I don't know
especially
how to do
for men.
Yes,
especially
exactly.
for men.
Especially for us.
They're like, I am not flexible. I'm not good at yoga. Yeah. I've never done it before. Like, I'm just, what you see on Instagram.
Like, it's the way for them to take the pressure off because they're not going to be able to do something perfectly.
Right.
I'm telling you.
But that's the beauty of yoga is it's not what you see on Instagram. It's not like all these people doing crazy things. Of course, that's like the fun of it and the challenge.
That's part of it, which I can do.
No, I actually cannot. But mainly it's just about like learning more about yourself too, which I love about it. But then also you don't have to be like the most flexible person to do things. Like there's always a variation for every single pose. So maybe you can't touch your toes, but you can touch your calves or your shins, or you can touch your thighs bent over, so there's always like a way to modify it for people that are like brand new to it, so there are a lot of different variations and it's accessible for everybody, every type of body as well. It's not just for like the fittest people, it's not for the most flexible people. It's literally for everyone. So it's great.
I usually also hear like the yoga, like beside the fact that it helps you, let's say, in aligning your body more physically, it's also a way of meditation. So how is yoga like a form of meditation? Like what can you tell me more about the meditation aspect of yoga?
This is also the thing that I've come to learn is that I think meditation, people think, okay, we're going to sit here in silence and be quiet and our mind and or whatever. Exactly. But there is such a thing as active meditation. You can be moving. You can actually go for a walk and that's a meditation. It's just about like reconnecting, like thinking, getting into your inner self and connecting with your breath, which a lot of the time in yoga, that's what we're doing. Every single movement is involved with a breath, whether it's inhale or exhale. So that can be very meditative, and then also the meditative side of it is when you're in a certain pose and the way you're talking to yourself during those poses. You know, are you judging yourself because you can't touch your toes? Or are you thinking about other things? You know, it's a way to kind of like slow your mind down a bit and like calm your nervous system. And that's the biggest thing for me.
So let's say it puts you more into the moment, like it keeps you focused on the moment that you are in currently.
Yeah.
Because like, for example, when I tend to go, let's say, to the gym and start training and so on, sometimes I get out of focus if, let's say, I couldn't do something, or like it's easy for me to get out of focus in the gym. But when I try, let's say, yoga myself, it have kept me to always be in the mood. Like it have helped me to always stay focused and be present in the moment. So I think what I got from your point is that it puts you more into perspective of where you are currently, and it, let's say, puts you in a sense where you're aware of your current presence at that moment.
Exactly. Because you're not only like aware of your thoughts and your breath, but you start to be aware of like little senses around you, you know, the sounds, smells, the whatever, you know, whatever birds are passing by at that time. So it like really helps you to kind of like reconnect with nature too, especially if you're doing yoga outside. So it's like a very nice, it puts you in that awareness kind of state, which is meditative.
I see.
So
what kind of like different yoga styles do we have? Because also like back then, some of the classes which I have attended, for example, or I know people have attended, are more related into stretching, and the others are more related into breath work. So what can you tell me about like the different names of yoga, like different types of yoga, and how are they different from one to the other?
So there's a few different types. I'm not like 100% knowledgeable on all types, but I practice a few myself. So Ashtanga is one of them. That's the one I practice with my teacher. That one is a lot more into flexibility, and you know, there's the challenging kind of aspect of it. It's more about that challenge, but also meditative at the same time. And then there's Vinyasa, which is more about like connecting with the breath.
So I think this is the one which
you're really like flowing constantly. It's like a movement, and every movement is an inhale, every movement is an exhale. So it's like a very constant flow all the time, which is really nice. I love that practice actually. There's Hatha yoga as well, which kind of balances the feminine and the masculine energies. It's a lot slower, you know, it's holding poses a lot longer. It's really transformative. I mean, all styles of yoga are really transformative. And now even more so, there's so many teachers that are just combining different types of styles. So there's so many different styles. There's gentle flow. There's yin yoga, which is like very relaxation. There's yoga nidra, which is like a sleep yoga essentially.
Oh, that's new.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Sleep yoga, like.
So you're basically in a very comfortable position, and you could have your eyes closed or covered with any like an eye thing. You're like kind of like sat in like with pillows on the side, and you're really like comfortable. You're fully relaxed. There's no pressure on any of your muscles. You're just really like laying, and then you have a practitioner that will take you through kind of a journey, 8 different stages of the thing. So they'll talk through the whole thing, and you're basically in a lucid state essentially. So you get into this really restful state, and it's amazing. It's like oftentimes I would fall asleep, which you don't want to fall asleep.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's really hard not to sometimes, especially when you're just learning, you know, or you're just doing it for the first time. But once you can kind of like master not falling asleep and you're just getting like half asleep and you're really in that lucid state, it helps your body like into maximum relaxation. It's great.
Super. Like, I mean, it feels to me that like it's a kind of yoga where you are like deprived from your senses. Like you try to be as much of a flow state as possible. Because like when you mentioned the pillow and so on and covering the eyes, like I remember being, let's say, in a chamber to deprive the senses and try to relax as much as possible from the surroundings, let's say.
Yeah.
So that's like pretty new for me, actually.
And one of the stages of yoga nidra is actually to like start imagining some of the senses around you. So like they might talk you through like a scene, you know, a nature scene, and you're really using your imagination instead of
To
using,
imagine, let's say,
yeah. So it's nice.
super actually. Lindsay, I have a question, which is like, let's say you're going to be guiding a group of people. Like, some of them are going to be beginners, some of them are going to be intermediate, and so on. Like, how do you tailor your teaching to accommodate the different levels in for the people who usually come?
So currently I do teach some group classes, and it's a wide range of abilities. And I think that's one of the main things that you learn in the teacher training is how to modify for each person. So whenever I teach a certain pose, I might say, okay, there's an option for you to do this. If you want more of a challenge, there's an option for you to do this. And you give like 3 levels, you know, about if there's a challenging pose, there's always about 3 different modifications for those people, so that everybody can feel like this is accessible to them. And it's not just, oh, I can't do this thing.
So I'm not going to be able to do it in general, let's say. So,
yeah, like if you can't do, let's just use the touching the toes, for example. You know, you can't touch your toes, you can touch your shins or touch your thighs. There's always like the 3, you know, levels of modification. Yeah.
Say. So you scale down the movement in order for it, let's say, to fit the capacity of someone who's attending the group class and so on.
And obviously also like at the beginning of a class, I'm always wondering, I try to get to know each person that's in my class, especially if they're new. What is your experience with yoga? Is this your first class ever? You know, maybe they're not going to have the full body awareness because, you know, as we're teaching, we're using words like, okay, we're going to flatten the back, bring the shoulder blades together. And some people, they haven't had this type of practice yet. So they don't really know, okay, what does that mean? You know, like, I don't know how to bring my shoulder blades down my back.
Like, I'm pretty sure, like, when you maybe like mention, bring your shoulder blades, and the person doesn't know his,
and they're like, shoulder blades, like what?
They're going to look around, see what the people are doing, or it's shoulder blades back. No.
Yeah, exactly. So it's about like using really kind of simplified language as well and not complicating it too much. And that was kind of something that I struggled with in my training because, you know, when you're teaching a pose, you want to instruct as many, you know, you want to use as many words as possible to like make sure they know what to do. But you also don't want to talk too much because then they're like thinking what you're saying and they're not really focusing on their own body. So you have to really simplify it, but you have to be really precise about the words that you're using.
Let's say, choose like the right, let's say, setup of words and how much of it, like in order for them to focus on you and not get too much, let's say, overdrawn with the words and the, let's say, information that they have to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see. Now, you went from the US, you've been to Thailand, then now you're here in the UAE. And beside your teaching job, you do the yoga teaching as well. What's the difference between Lindsay back then in the US and Lindsay now? Like, what have you learned through this journey of teaching others, let's say at kindergarten and as a yoga instructor?
I think for one, I think going as like starting with an education career was kind of like foreshadowing for my yoga career because as a yoga teacher, you know, you're in front of a bunch of people, you're having to give instructions, you're having to simplify words, you're having to really like tailor the needs of each person, which is exactly what I do in the classroom, you know? So taking everything that I've learned in my teaching career with teaching children, which I do the exact same things. I simplify the language, I tailor it to each person, I give each person individual care, you know, all of that is kind of part of the whole process. So it was kind of interesting to take this new path of teaching yoga and feeling really comfortable with it and feeling like it was natural because it's what I've been doing for 10 years, you know, so it's quite easy to just kind of transition into that flow.
Lindsay, let me ask you, like, did yoga help you in overcoming, let's say, a challenging part of your life? Like, did it play a role in shaping you as Lindsay now? Like, have you went through, let's say, a life struggle where yoga was like a way to go for you to help you in, let's say, meditating and like get like away from the hardship of life, let's say?
Yeah, absolutely it did. And I think every single yoga teacher in the world would probably agree that we teach yoga because we ourselves have experienced something and then saw the transformative process that it gave us. And now it's like our purpose to teach that to other people, because we know firsthand how much it changes you. For me personally, I think 2020 was probably the year for me that my health kind of was taking a decline.
Oh, okay.
Obviously, COVID happened, so there was a lot of uncertainty. And as teachers as well, it was a really hard time for us. You know, we're learning how to teach online, and some of us were teaching online and in person simultaneously. So like, you know, one of my friends had a little headset and she's teaching online for her kids while other kids are in the class. So it's like, you know, this constant back and forth of both things.
Between the online and the physical classes. Yeah.
It was really a challenging time for teachers. For me at that time, I kind of came to realize that I was really dealing with burnout. I was extremely exhausted all the time. I was like getting sick all the time. I just wasn't doing well. It was kind of like, I started feeling a lot of less motivation with my job, you know, a lot of less joy with my job. And I felt like, okay, this is maybe not the path that I want to continue on. And then later in 2020, I went through like a really devastating loss in my family. And then it was, you know, COVID. So we're in lockdown. I can't go home, be with my family at that time. So, and as a teacher, especially in early years, you know, life stops for no one. You have to just continue going. And I had to like go to work and put on this happy, bubbly kindergarten teacher face when I was dealing with extreme exhaustion and grieving at the same time. So that was definitely a hard time. And there were a couple of years that I went through that, that it was just this constant negative cycle of like, I'm not happy with my job. I can't, you know, function in my daily life. I'm not managing my friendships and relationships well. I'm sleeping so much because I'm so overtired. And then because I'm exhausted, I'm not going to the gym. I'm not working out. I'm not moving my body. I'm not cooking because I'm, you know, in this state
like you're
of like
overwhelmed with the pressure of life. Let's say.
Exactly. So it was like pretty much 2 years of like going through this negative cycle. And then like towards the end of 2022, I was very much like, oh, I cannot live like this anymore. This is really, you know, affecting my life in the worst way. I wasn't myself anymore. I was just kind of like a zombie, basically, you know, just trying to get through the next day. But I wasn't living, you know, I really was not living.
Like it felt like you were like a walking dead person, just like walking around, like trying to get through the day.
Honestly, like 2021, I don't even know what happened in that year. I can't even like, I have like no memory of how that year went, because it was just constant sleeping, work, and just negativity all the time. And so, it was very much like, okay, how am I going to get myself out of this? You know? Backstory, in 2020 or 2018, I went to nutrition school, just as like a little side project. I wanted to kind of like deep dive into my own health a little bit. I really liked health and wellness, and I wanted to kind of get more into like my holistic health. So I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It's an online holistic health coaching company or school. So did that. And again, that was like a tool that I used later on that really helped me kind of narrow down the steps that I was going to take to get myself out of this burnout, grief, you know, anxiety, depression, all that stuff. So that's kind of where I started, basically, was getting into like more nutrition stuff.
Like through the 2 years of COVID, like I remember that a lot of people also like have went through like devastating times. Like, as you mentioned, from depression, anxiety, because of like being at home constantly, like being away from a social circle, like being away from friends, family, and so on. So it has been like a very grief time, even for our immunity system, like because we were not like attached to nature as much as before, as much as we should be. Like I remember at that time, like a lot of businesses have went down. Like a lot of people like committed suicide because of the depression that they got through, and like knowing that like there's a tool, for example, as you just told me, like yoga was like a tool and nutrition were like a tool for you to get out of this, is amazing. I'm going to get into that later on, but tell me a little bit about the nutrition school and the holistic, let's say, approach. What did you learn from it, and what is it exactly?
Yeah, so this was a 2-year kind of deep dive into my health at that point. It was a program that focused on learning about not only nutrition, it wasn't just, what foods are going to be better for your body, anti-inflammatory foods. I learned about every single diet there is, all of that, all about protein and, everything science related as well. But it was more focused about holistic health. So taking into account your entire area of your life. So not just your nutrition, but your finances, your relationships, your career, your home environment, your, it was your spirituality. It was like a whole encompassing thing. And that's what the whole idea of holistic health is it's not just looking at what you're eating. It's okay. If you're having any sort of physical ailments, it could also be connected to any sort of like emotional thing. Everything is very interconnected. And that's the whole basis behind holistic health is that everything works synergistically. So once I kind of realized, okay, my physical health is kind of taking a decline because I'm dealing with all of these emotional things. How can I kind of narrow down what area of my life I need to work on first?
I see. I see. Yeah.
And I know you mentioned once in your previous podcast that there's so much information online.
Very true.
I mean,
Very true.
how do you even know?
I'm so happy that you wanted me in the episode. Thank you so much. At least someone is watching. All right. It's good to know
Well,
that.
I had to watch some episodes, right?
Very true.
But you know what I mean? Like there's so much information. And if you're already in a state of like, you're going through some health problems, where do you even begin?
Very true.
So
Very
that
true.
was another part of the course was like how to narrow down what areas of your life that you need to kind of work on and where to begin, basically.
Where did you begin? Like after you got, let's say, the scope of your life, what did you find? Like, let's say, what was the target for you and how did you fix that? And because I can see now that you're like, let's say, in a better state, better mood, compared to what you described for me back in 2020 to 2022. So how did you target? What was missing from your life? What did you need to fix? And how did you fix it?
So there's 3 things that I talk about on my Instagram. I have like 3 overarching ideas that I kind of narrow down. It's nutrition, mindset, and movement. I started with nutrition because that was the training that I had. I knew that, okay, let me take a deep dive into what am I eating? Am I eating properly? I got more into anti-inflammatory foods and blood sugar balancing foods. I read this book called The Glucose Revolution and all about blood sugar balancing, what blood sugar spikes are doing for your mental health. So I kind of like dove into that kind of stuff. And I started kind of just incorporating little things. I started really small. I think that's also another thing that people struggle with is there's so many things to do and you don't need to do everything all at the same time. I really took some time to just be slow with it, take one thing at a time and run with that for a month.
I like the approach.
Don't feel like you need to be adding on all these things because what you do is then you just become overwhelmed. So I started with one thing. And then I just continually started adding more things to my toolbox. For me, eating breakfast was the first thing that I did to get myself out of burnout.
All right, so you didn't used to eat breakfast before also?
So this was the thing. I did eat breakfast in the past, but when I was dealing with burnout, I was very exhausted. So I would sleep until the last possible minute before I needed to go to work. I'd get up, I'd go straight to work, and I would just have coffee. I'm like running on coffee all day. And then I'm feeling my mood is like declining at like 10 a.m. because I'm so hungry. But because I was so exhausted, did I prepare a good lunch? No. So I'm eating whatever I can at the time, maybe from like the school cafe or whatever. And it's not enough food, so I'm feeling very irritable during the day and my mood is not doing anything good for me, So I started focusing on, let me eat high fat breakfast because it's going to help me stay satiated during the day. It's going to keep my blood sugar balanced. And it was just like the easiest thing to incorporate. You know, it was just like this week I'm going to eat breakfast. That is my only
This
goal.
is the goal for
You
this
know,
week.
I am only going to eat breakfast and it's going to help me just stay a little bit more stable. And it did. It started building my energy a bit and it really started to like snowball a little bit. Like, okay, my energy is coming back, starting to feel a little bit better. You know, I'm getting some vitamin D, so it's good. Like I just felt starting to feel a little bit more joyful, you know? And then that's when I started getting more into like the mindset side of things, started reading a little bit more, started just taking more time for myself and not putting so much pressure on myself to perform, especially at work. You know, I really started to just, I'm going to take some time for me. I'm going to sit and do nothing because not a lot of people don't do that.
Very true.
You know, we're constantly like going.
We need the next buzz. Like we need the next thing to do. Like nowadays, like it's so hard for people to just sit and do nothing.
Yeah.
And though like this is like where the mind is most creative, like when you are bored.
Exactly. So just getting into that like self-care, kind of taking some time to really just sit with my thoughts, maybe do some journaling. I do a lot of journaling, just as like a meditative practice actually. And I just really started to see like a slow increase in like my ability to like function in my life again. And again, just adding little tools all the time. And eventually you have this big toolbox of things, you know?
Like
and
now you get to a point where like building up on the small stuff, like trying not to be overwhelmed by the amount of things which you have to do to reach, let's say, perfection in a sense. So you build up on small things, and by the end, you're going to see like the big Lego have been built. And now you have all the tools that you need to handle your life more better, like your health and so on. And because of the what you mentioned, like nutrition, moving, and the mindfulness.
And then yoga kind of came back into play then because I started having, you know, much more energy and I was feeling a little bit better. And I thought, okay, yoga is going to be the least intense type of thing that I could do for my body. You know, I used to be a big gym goer. I was like going to F45 classes. I'm going to Barry's boot camp. You know, I'm like really like doing the cardio, like really getting into the weights, you know, and I was just like, that's not gonna be for me now. I know that I'm not ready for that yet. And I started just going to some yoga classes and I hadn't done yoga in a couple of years. You know, it had been like, I went through this time where I just didn't do anything. And I just thought, okay, yoga is going to feel good. It's going to make me feel good. And it did. It made me like really, and this is, I don't know how much you know about yoga, but
I don't know.
Okay. One thing about yoga that I think maybe a lot of people would talk about is that even though it's a physical practice, it's so much more than just a physical practice. It's a practice that really releases a lot of stored stress and energy in your body. So especially if you've gone through like a traumatic, you know, experience or grief, or you have a really high stress job, you store all that stress in your body. You store it in the fascia in your skin. So yoga is a tool to release a lot of that stored stress and emotion. So I found myself really having a lot of that like emotional release. And I'm not going to lie to you, I would go to those classes and I would just be like crying.
Like, oh God,
my God, here it comes.
It's coming.
You know,
I can't control it, but it's coming.
It was a really big part of like that healing process. You know, it really helped me get through a lot of that stuff. And that's when I kind of started seeing like, oh, okay, yoga is that thing for me it's really helping. It's like that added boost for my healing process.
It's doing the change for me. Like it's making me move forward in my life.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. I need to like ask something. So let's say I'm someone who came recently to you and asks you, Lindsay, please guide me through this. Let's say nutrition, guide me through the mindfulness, guide me through the movement. How would you start with me? Like, how do you evaluate, for example, me? What are the things that you need to know about me to, let's say, guide me through the process?
The first thing that I always do, especially, with really anybody, is I have this tool that I got in the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. It's called a wellness wheel. So it's just it's got 7 areas. It's divided into these different areas. And it's the areas I was talking about before: the finances, career, education, home environment, spirituality, all of that. And you kind of, it's a nice visual for you to see what area you need to really improve on. And each area has a scale. So it will be from 0 to 10. How fulfilled are you in this area?
I see.
And you kind of make a little dot in each of the areas where how fulfilled you are, connect the dots, and then you can see either a circle if you're fully fulfilled or not fulfilled in any area equally.
None of us is fully fulfilled. I'm just going to say that. So
there's always going to be one area that you can see has the most you really need to work on, you know? So that's kind of how I first narrowed down, like, okay, let's do a quick evaluation of your holistic health, and then we can kind of see where we need to go from there. So that's the best tool, honestly. Especially if someone is feeling like, okay, my physical health is the lowest point right now. It's like, okay, let's look at your daily life. Where can we add even just small bits of movement? You know, I always try to promote just small things, not, you know, one step at a time, nothing crazy. We're not, you know, trying to start something like over the top or anything like that. And it's just an easier way to get the process going.
Start with the basics, because like usually when you, let's say, advise someone to get to the full picture from day one, they're going to be like, oh, this is so hard for me. But if you give them, let's say, small goals, like if you give them small basic stuff to do, like for example, tomorrow, for the next week, I want you to sleep well. Like after they do that, okay, now I want you to eat well, in a sense. So like guide them through the small basic stuff. And by the end of it, like it's going to be like a lifestyle for them.
Exactly.
I like the approach, yeah.
A couple of clients that I've had have come to me and they just want to lose weight. You know? And
tell me about it.
I've always been a very, like, I'm not a weight loss coach. I never want to be a weight loss coach. I don't do these things to lose weight. It just is a symptom of eating better and living healthier, you know? But it should never, in my opinion, be that sole goal. Like, I only want to lose weight. That's the only thing I want to do. It's more about, let's change that mindset to be more like, I just want to feel better. Like, I want to feel like I have more energy. I want to feel like I'm not, you know, I'm able to go to the gym and not feel like really bad about myself. You know, it's just about changing that mindset. So I've had to like have those conversations with some of the clients I've had where we're just like, let's shift that a little bit. So we're not only focusing on the weight loss side of it, because then it ends up being like, I'm doing this because I need to change the way I look. And really it should be, I'm doing this because I value myself and I want to, like, you know, feel like I'm just better. I feel well.
Like, you know, the point which you mentioned about losing the weight, like I noticed that a lot of people, if they started with a goal in mind, and that is, let's say, lose a weight, when they reach the goal weight which they want, they usually tend to bounce back because in their mind, like, okay, now we got it and we got to the point where we want, and then they're going to start to be, let's say, I'm not going to say lethargic, but they're going to start bouncing back because they didn't have, let's say, a strict goal. They didn't have the right mindset to why do we need to get there. So as you mentioned, like tailoring the person in front of you mindset, the mindset of the person in front of you to a way where you can do this as a lifestyle where you can take better choices in your life and you can see it reflect later on in your life. This should be the goal other than just losing weight.
Yeah. Because I find that people that are only with that mindset of, I just want to lose weight because I want to change myself, it ends up being, like you said, they go back to like old patterns and things. But if you change the way you think about it and you think, I just want to feel better, then you're coming with this, like, you value yourself. And then when you value yourself, you're building more confidence. And when you have more confidence, then you can actually continue to live that way instead of like, oh, I have to do this crash diet real quick because I need to lose weight for this event that I have. Yeah. You know.
And can you please tell me more about the how do you use yoga outside in your daily life?
So, you know, the true essence of yoga is not really what you do on your mat. It's not about how flexible you are, what kind of poses you can do. That is the fun part of it. But there's so many principles that we learn through practicing yoga that you can take outside of that practice and use it in your daily life. So in history, in yogic history, there's all these different types of principles, and they're all in Sanskrit, but they translate to words that we can really use for personal development. So one of them is ahimsa, which is nonviolence, non-harm. It's the one that I taught in my last class because it obviously translates to like a very specific thing, like being nonviolent. Of course, we want to live by that way. You know, everybody should be nonviolent, but it really also translates to like being kinder to yourself too. It's about not harming yourself, not like flowing through life with like this force and, you know, judging yourself and judging others. It's about really kind of taking everything that you're doing and doing it with compassion, especially towards yourself, but towards others too. So there's those types of principles, you know, and they teach you that when you're practicing yoga, because when you're in certain poses, you might be talking really poorly to yourself. Like, why can't you do this? Like, why are you falling over? Like, you know, your mind is constantly wandering. So when you're in these types of practices, these principles you can really take into like daily life. So for example, I'm stuck in traffic and somebody cuts me off and I'm really mad.
Going so mad on them. Okay.
I'm just like, okay, you know what? I am going to live my life with compassion and this person's in a rush.
Yes.
That's all I'm going to know. Like, you know, and you find yourself really like living in a way that's just much easier to like find happiness and gratitude around you. Yeah.
I mean, you start seeing happiness and joy in the small things rather than, let's say, rushing into being angry, rushing into like blaming others and so on. Like you try to be as compassionate, as peaceful as you mentioned. Now, another thing that I wanted to actually ask you about, like nowadays, I don't know if you notice, but like there's a big shift from the past to the future. Sorry, from the past to our current days in terms of obesity, in terms of depression, anxiety, and problems. Like, why do you think is that? Like, why do you think, like, as a person who has a background in holistic nutrition and that part of education, why do you think the shift have happened from the past till now? Like, what have changed in our lives?
You mean that people are now more obese now and
so on,
having all these mental health crises? And I think a huge part of it definitely has to do with nutrition. I mean, there's so many processed foods now. Everything is processed. Everything has sugar in it. And as much as I'm not somebody that I don't like to, you know, ever promote people to be on like restrictive diets. I'm not, you know, saying like, don't have this, you can't have this, you can't have that. It's more about like adding in more good stuff so that you're crowding out all the bad stuff. You know, it's not that you can't have these certain things. It's just eat all these really good things first, you know, and then you'll slowly start to see that those processed foods and other things, you just don't want them anymore. But I think people have a really hard time with they're grabbing things that are easy, that are going to be fast.
Yes.
And a lot of the time they're over processed with inflammatory oils and sugar. Sugar is a big one. It's in literally everything. Ketchup.
Like all the problems are from sugar. Yeah.
Sugar. Yeah. And like, it's not that you can't have it, you know, you can have it when you want it, but do it. My thing is that I want to eat sugar when it's on my terms, not when it's like sneakily in some product that I didn't know it was going to be in there, you know? So I do read labels when I go to the grocery store, because if I'm buying things that are packaged, which I don't really buy that many packaged things anymore, but when I do, I want to check those labels because I want to know what kind of oils did they use in this, what kind of, how much sugar is going to be in it. So I think the shift now is because there's just so many options out there for people to be like grabbing really easy meals and things, and they're just loaded with bad things that you don't even know that you're consuming them, you know?
Like nowadays, like if you go to the market, you're going to see like a lot of products which are filled, as you mentioned, like in oils, sugars, additives, and things which our bodies did not use to process before. Like back then, if you, let's say, go back 100 years before, or more than 100 years, like for the hunter-gatherers, let's say, era of time, like people back then used to just eat natural food, things which they can, let's say, hunt, harvest, and so on. But now when you go to the market, you see the cheapest stuff are the bad stuff for you. So like this is also like a part of the problem, where in addition to the bad food being consumed with oils, sugars, and so on. It's also the cheaper option, and it's the way to go for most of the people, because you also see this like big diversity in the financial, let's say, gap between people. So I can't tell someone who is not financially stable to go and let's say buy organic food and foods which are more natural, and that also reflects on the society, like in terms of mental illnesses, in terms of health issues, and that's a really big problem actually. And I don't know how we can fix that. And like, what's in your mind, like a way for people to start? Like, what's the basic stuff that they can start with for someone who doesn't have the capacity to, let's say, consume the most natural food or organic food in its sense?
I mean, I also see this every day as a teacher, where we promote healthy eating to the children that we're teaching. But like a lot of these families also have a lot of kids. So how do they afford to have enough food for their kids, their family? They're having all these things. And in the school that I work in, we are very strict about they need to have a healthy snack. They need to have a healthy lunch. We give them the education, the parents' education about what types of snacks we're looking for, what types of foods we're looking for, what things are not allowed, no candy, no chocolate. These kids are bringing like Nutella sandwiches, and
like, this is not a snack. This is not food. What are you guys doing?
I get it though, because as a kindergarten teacher, children are picky. They are very picky eaters, and it must be hard, it must be really hard for parents to find something that's going to be healthy for their child. But I think that also starts with your own personal, like when you're a parent and what your personal eating habits are, that's going to be reflected in your child. So taking that radical responsibility in yourself and making sure that you're eating healthy too. I think the advice I give is, again, that same concept of adding in more healthy foods like fruits, vegetables, all the whole foods, adding more of those in so that you can crowd out all the bad stuff. It's very easy to just, afternoon, I want to have this bag of chips for a snack, because it's quick and simple.
Exactly. Like, it's available, it's cheap, it's quick. I just open it up, eat it, and that's it. I'm done.
Yeah. But I think starting to change the pattern of, okay, I'm not going to grab that this time. I'm going to have an apple with some almond butter. Like, I know it can be expensive though. And that's kind of like, for me, in my, the way that I shop for food is that food is kind of like my biggest expense at this point. And I very much value, like, I'm going to the grocery store knowing that, okay, this is going to be like, I'm going to probably spend a lot of money, but I really value the food that I'm eating because I know that it's going to help me in my life. So I don't really cut out, I don't budget on that type of stuff. I budget the other areas of my life so that I can afford that type of food,
So because it's like your main priority is something which you value the most, because like what you eat is going to reflect on your health and so on. So this is like your main priority. So in a sense, it's like prioritizing yourself, because when you look at it, also there's a lot of, let's say, unneeded expenses, which we usually do. But if you, let's say, plan yourself, prioritize things which you want, like as you said, the value of your food, which you bring, has to be, let's say, a main priority for you if the finance is an issue for you. Because what you eat is going to reflect on your health, and it's not also cheap to spend your life in the hospital. Because as they say, if you think that diet is expensive, then try being sick. Yeah.
No, exactly. I also think like a lot of people, and maybe it could be cultural too, because they're here, especially there's so many different cultures of people, and you're bringing food from your cultures and trying to figure out what's going to be a healthier option for that type of food. And I think oils is the biggest thing. Just changing like little tiny ingredients within the food. Keep your cultural food, still cook it the same, or still eat the same things that you do, but instead kind of take out some of like the inflammatory oils and cook with other types of oils. And it would be just a much healthier meal. But that's, again, something that maybe people just don't know a lot about. It comes down to like the education side of it.
What are the inflammatory oils? Like you mentioned now, like there some type of oils are inflammatory. Like, for example, what are they?
Canola oil is the biggest one. Pretty much if you go to the grocery store, any of the oils that are not in dark glass bottles, those are all anti-inflammatory, or those are all inflammatory. So I try not to cook with any of those ever. Most of the time I'm cooking with, I'm topping my food with olive oil because olive oil doesn't have as high of a cook point. So if you're cooking with it, it's burning. So oils that have high cook points are like coconut oil, ghee. I cook a lot with ghee.
Ghee, yeah, beef tallow, I think.
Yeah, stuff like that. So I really kind of try and stick with just those. All the other ones are just not
usable.
No.
Like also, I once read that rapeseed oil and canola oil and all of these, like back then, manufacturers used to use them as a lubricant for the machines, and nowadays we can find them in our food. So, like, imagine, like, we're eating things which have been used to lubricate machines. It's basically not consumable by humans, but for some reason, like, manufacturing companies are putting it in our food because I think as a cost, it's a cheaper cost for them, which generates more money to the companies. And that's like a big cycle, which we humans are falling into. Like, in a sense, sometimes it's feel as we're like a product to companies, and that's like a root cause of a problem, of like a bigger problem.
Yeah, no, it is. It's really about prioritizing like the health of people versus what's going to cost less, which is, it's just a really sad reality that we're living in right now, is that everything that is produced in the grocery stores, like most of them are really not healthy for you. And you have to take that time to really look at what's in the label. What are the ingredients in this? And are you going to prioritize this snack because it's easy and cheap to buy, or are you going to prioritize like your health? And, so definitely taking a look at those labels is the way to go.
Yeah, it's like a way to start. Like, try to, as you said, like, get something which is as close to nature as possible. Like, try to get away from all the processed food and the sugars and so on. Like, I think this is like a good way to start. Like, having better choices when you go shopping can be like a good way to start.
Yeah.
Lindsay, what brings you joy in life? Like, tell me now, okay, now I got to know more about yoga and nutrition and let's say, that aspect of the equation. Now, what brings you joy in life as Lindsay? How do you feel fulfilled?
I think just this past year, really like narrowing down what my purpose is in this life, and what really brings me joy is really helping people. I think my friends would probably describe me as a very nice person.
All right.
I like to be there for people. I like to let people know that I'm, a good solid, I'm there for you. And that kind of really gives me joy to help other people. And I think in the past, that was always the kind of thought that I wanted. I want to help people. I want to be in that space of helping people. And going into the teaching route was like a good way of doing that, because I felt I was making a difference,
Like you're giving back to the community.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Exactly. And now, even more so now with teaching yoga, I feel like I'm giving them this gift that is something that really was like so transformational for me. And it just like lights me up to do it. It makes me so happy to share something that I love doing personally, because it's so good for me that I know even if I just reach one person in my class, like I'm good, You're
like, if I'm able to change a single life, like if I'm able to guide someone from my experience to take better choices, to have a better life in the future, then I'm good with it.
Yeah.
So this is the purpose for it. Now, what do you think is our role as individuals to help growing our community? Like, what can we do on a daily basis to, let's say, have a better community, have a better society to live in for the future, for us, for our kids? Where can we start?
I think first and foremost, you have to learn about yourself in order, and like develop yourself before you can be anything good for anybody else, So really like taking yourself as a priority and learning about, patterns that you have, and maybe just learning about ways that you can develop further in a more positive way so that you can be that for somebody else. That's what creates that community of people. Because as soon as you're developing yourself, you're feeling more positive, you're healing, you're in a good space, you don't surround yourself with people that are not also in that space. It becomes much easier to kind of weed out the people that are maybe not yet there. And then you can also be somewhat of an inspiration then too for those people, hopefully.
So like it's like in a sense it filters out all, let's say, the noise around you, and like it's gonna help you in focusing more on the niches of people where, okay, this is my niche. These are the people which I can help. These are the people which I reflect on.
They're more like drawn to you when you've already kind of started taking your health and your life as a priority. You're more you get more surrounded by people that also want to live on that path too. And that's what grows that really positive, happy community,
Where does like a good social circle and having a good friends and good relations fit in all of this? Like, do you see that it has a role in growing us to be better, like making us be better as humans?
I mean, what's that saying that's like your five people in your life are I can't think of the quote now, but it's something about,
I think that I heard
like,
something
your five closest people are the most important people for your personal growth,
Very
right?
true, very
Like
true.
who you surround yourself with really matters. So making sure that if you have friends that are, really negative people that are maybe going down a destructive path, it's not that you can't be there for them, but you have to start having boundaries for yourself that are those types of people going to push you onto the path that you really want to be on. Are they gonna help you grow? Or do you have a circle of people around you that are also on this path of they're taking their health and their life as a priority? And when you see other people doing that, it motivates you to continue doing that.
All right, Lindsay, tell me, are you happy in life? This is a question that I usually ask all the guests which come in here. And because for me, happiness and, let's say, feeling gratitude and gratefulness while we are alive, it's something which I think that everyone has to find to feeling fulfilled, grateful, and happy in life. So are you happy in life?
I think right now in this moment of time, I'm probably the happiest I've ever been. And I think that comes from knowing what it was like to not be in this place, really feeling that I wasn't here before and now I'm at this place, and reflecting back and looking at the last 2 years of my life and seeing, okay, wow, I've learned all these things and I've gotten to this different place. I'm in a completely different headspace now, and I can see that I'm happier. I find like joy in small little things. I'm driving down the road and I'm like, oh, look at this tree. Like I just
Like
the smallest of things that I would in the past, I would just be driving home, not looking at anything. I'm like, why is this tree there?
Please move away. Why is the tree over here?
But you know what I mean? Like you're able to just like find these little things the smallest things that give you this little bit of joy. And it's been amazing. And now I think, I'm happiest now because I'm teaching yoga finally, something that I wanted to do for so long. And it's going really well. And I'm like feeling like, I'm feeling really fulfilled. I have this purpose now, So yeah, I would say I'm definitely happy.
I'm really happy that you found your purpose, like you found something which reflects on you as Lindsay. Because as you told me, like back then you grew up in a home, like a big home, and that's where you wanted to, let's say, you saw yourself as an educator, and that's why you took that path. And now yoga is like a vehicle for you to carry all the experience which you had back then, all the past that you had, and reflect now on the community that you're in, and you would feel fulfilled. Final question, Lindsay. What do you think the purpose of us here in this life, from your own point of view?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Purpose in life. Honestly, I really have to say that, we have to live our lives as compassionate people and we also have to come to this realization that whatever we do in this life should also be for other people, really trying to be just a little bit more understanding, and realize that this is our first time on earth, everybody, so we're all learning. We're all creatures of habit.
All the blueprint
Exactly. Like we're all just trying to figure it out. That, there are a lot of people in this world that maybe need a little bit of an extra help once in a while for inspiration and motivation. And I think that's your purpose, is to just be good for yourself, develop your own self, go inward, and then teach that to people so that we can be a positive community.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Lindsay. Thank you so much. Can you please tell us, like, where can people find you, and where do you teach the yoga? Like, if anyone is interested, how can they approach you?
So I'm on Instagram, it's Thrive with Lindsay, and I teach yoga every Wednesday in Ream Central Park. It's a nice little community that we have going. It's every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. And it's great. I would love to have you come as well, by the way.
All right. That's here. Maybe if I don't have an interview, I'll do that. Sure, no problem.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, Lindsay, for coming in. I really do appreciate your time. Is there anything that you want to share before we close up the episode?
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me. It's been so fun to talk about my story.
You are most welcome. And I wish you nothing but happiness in life for you and your family, and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.